If this were a more complicated walkthrough animation, we might opt to attach the camera to a spline using a path constraint. But this is a very simple case, and that would be overkill. I covered the path constraint technique in another course, which is 3ds Max Cinematography for Visualization. In this simple case, we can get very good results just using the motion path feature of the standard position controller. I'll stop that and rewind. All we have to do is select our animated object, the camera, and go over to the motion panel and activate motion paths. And we can see the object's trajectory or path as it moves through space. And this explains partially why our animation looked a little bit strange. It's because the path is not a perfect arc. It's a horseshoe shape, as seen in the world Y dimension. The effect of that is that the camera is moving in and out along its own line of sight. We can clean this up and just make it a nice arc using the motion paths. I'll scrub to a different point in time so that we can see these keyframes here a little bit better. To move a keyframe, all we need to do is select the Move tool and then click on a keyframe to select it. And over in the motion path, we're automatically dropped into sub-object keys mode. And then we can just click and drag and move that. Let's get in a bit closer with Control-Alt-Middle Mouse. As we move that keyframe around, notice that it's not changing the shape of the path. To do that, we want to get at some Bezier tangent handles. These keys all need to be converted to Bezier. Now that can be a little confusing at first because if you remember from the last movie, the keyframes in the curve editor are already Bezier spline curves with tangent handles. But this motion path feature here is a higher level of control. It's a way to adjust the curve editor splines from the reference frame of the world coordinates, rather than from the frame of individual keyframe values. This higher level of control is a spline curve in 3D space, and the control vertices on that motion path can be of different types. For full control of the shape of the curve, we want the motion path control vertices to have tangent handles, so we'll convert them all to Auto Bezier. Drag a selection rectangle to select all those keyframes. Then over in the motion panel, click on the button Set Tangents to Auto. And immediately that has cleaned up our arc. And now we've got tangent handles on each keyframe, even if we can't see them. Let's get in really close on this center keyframe here and select it. And if we get in very, very close, we may be able to see tangent handles, but sometimes this doesn't refresh. It's kind of unfortunate. It's a bit of a display glitch, but if you just move that keyframe, then those tangent handles will appear. And actually that changed the shape of the curve subtly, so that's another kind of issue to look out for. So I've got an incoming and an outgoing tangent handle, and to change the shape of the interpolation of this spline curve, we can click on one of those tangent handles, and with the Move tool active, manipulate it. And as always with the Move tool, we can constrain to certain axes, and if we click on the bracket, we can move that tangent handle in both X and Y. If we click on the X axis, we're only moving in X. And notice as I do that the spacing between these dots is changing. That spacing indicates the speed of motion. Each one of the dots is a frame. My current frame rate is 30 FPS. The distance between those dots is the distance traveled in 1/30th of a second. If they're very close together, like at the ends of the arc, then the object is moving slowly. Wherever the dots are spaced far apart, the object is moving more quickly. Okay, let's see what that little change did. I'll click play and observe the results here in my camera viewport. And we see that we've got a better arc, although we could probably improve this. All right, I'll stop the playback. Again, all of this is actually changing the function curves in the curve editor. We can go back into the curve editor and adjust the function curves directly, but be aware that unless you're careful, you will end up changing not only the timing, but the shape of the resulting motion path. For example, you may want to adjust the slow in or slow out without altering the trajectory or the shape of the path. Then you would need to use the lock tangents feature we saw in the previous movie to adjust tangents of multiple keyframes simultaneously while maintaining their proportional relationships. That illustrates the effectiveness of a motion path to edit position keyframes. And it concludes our chapter on animation.